All right, welcome everyone to Reflect, Recalibrate the podcast. We are your lovely Lady Artivist hosts, the lovely Janet E. Dandridge, and myself, Danny Snyder. This is part one. Hello. I'm sorry, Janet. You're trying to say hi, and I'm like, we got things to do.
This is true. We have things to do. True.
We have a lot of really cool things that we want to talk about today. And of course, like every other episode, we'll see if we get through all of them. This is going to be part one of the Quotidian Radicality Collection, my new favorite title of any of our collections. In this collection, we are exploring somatics, ritual, placekeeping, and playing cards. And we're asking to you all today and to all of our future listeners, how do you practice liberation on a daily basis? We're going to come back to this question because you guys know the drill. For our listeners, we always start every episode with a little bit of a news bite. Janet's going to take us on our news bite today. Where are we going?
Oh boy, we're going to two different spaces. Okay, so today's quick news bite is from two sources, Art Forum and eFlux Notes. All right, so the members of the international jury responsible for awarding the top prizes at the 61st Venice Biennale today announced their resignation in mass. I believe that's how you say that, en masse, en masse. Jury President Solange Oliveira Farkas and members Zoe Butt, Marta Kuzma, Elvira Diangani Ose, and Giovanna Zaperi had been handpicked by Koyo Kuo, the Biennale's artistic director, who died suddenly last summer. The group issued a brief statement, which was posted on the Instagram and the website of arts platform eFlux, acknowledging their departure. And this is from that statement. Quote, "We, the members of the International Jury for In Minor Keys, the 61st International Art Exhibition of La Biennale di Venezia, I apologize to my folks out there, Italian, are honored to have been selected for this role by Koyo Kuo, the artistic director. We are committed to contributing to her project by designating the artists for the Golden and Silver Lion from among the 110 artists Kuo selected to be part of the exhibition. By doing so, we recognize the work of her curatorial team, which includes Gabe Beckhurst Feju, Marie-Hélène Pereira, Rasha Salti, Siddhartha Mitter, and Rory Sapayi. As members of the jury, we also have a responsibility towards the historical role of the Biennale as a platform that connects art to the urgencies of its time. We acknowledge the complex relationship between artistic practice and nation-state representation that provides a central structure for the Venice Biennale, particularly the way this relation binds artists' work with the actions of the state they represent. At this edition of the Biennale, we wish to set out our intention to express our commitment to the defense of human rights and to the spirit of Koyo Kuo's curatorial project. Consequently, this jury will refrain from considering those countries whose leaders are currently charged with crimes against humanity by the International Criminal Court. In this, we stand in solidarity to embrace Koyo Kuo's own curatorial statement. Quote, "In refusing the spectacle of horror, the time has come to listen to the minor keys, to tune in sottovoce to the whispers, to the lower frequencies, to find the to find the oases, the islands where the dignity of all living beings is safeguarded." Signed, members of the international jury, Solange Farkas, Chair, Zoe Butt, Elvira Diangani Ose, Marta Kuzma, and Giovanni Zaperi.
Yeah.
What I've read a couple of different articles on this, some different articles on this, and
Hmm.
one of the things that sticks out to me is this line, whose leaders are currently charged with crimes against humanity by the
Yeah.
International Criminal Court.
Okay,
I
yes.
it's painful because it it reminds me that there's been crimes against humanity
Hmm.
continuously. And
Hmm.
these are just the current folks. They were speaking of Russia and Israel.
Hmm.
And then I was thinking, well, what about the United States?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I thought too. I was like, one, we're helping to fund this genocide. And also, I'm thinking about what about we haven't done reparations either for slavery, for, I mean, like, so like, I just, it's strange to me. It's like when you start to draw that line, it's like, okay, well then who's really eligible for this Biennale? I don't know.
Right. Who's really eligible right now? Right. And I appreciate
Yeah.
and uplift what they're doing
Yeah.
because it's important in terms of, the signifiers, the show of solidarity, as they said. But I can't help but think about all of the other countries. And then it's like, would that be all the countries in the Biennale? Like, would it be all of them? I don't know all of the countries that participate in the Biennale, but if we just think about it, if we were if the Biennale or if it was situated via the culture of Ministry of Culture, I believe it is in Italy, that this Biennale does not support any countries that have ever participated in crimes against humanity, that right there would be a statement, first of all, an
Hmm.
artistic statement from an artistic
Hmm.
institution, because probably there would be no countries to participate. And then the Venice Biennale would not happen. And then, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
talk about radical. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Or just like, even like how how would you, sorry, I got distracted because I accidentally kicked my kitty cat. Didn't know they were sleeping on my foot. Sorry, baby. But I was
Oh,
just
Lord.
like, no, I am kicking my feet though right now because I'm just like, how would you even figure that out? Like, how would you define that? What would that criteria be? But that would be really radical. That'd be really cool. And if it was only one country, that would be a statement for sure. Yeah. But I'm also thinking too about countries that have been colonized. Like, how do you even do you like are we going to go to the history before they were colonized? Yeah, what an experiment
Right,
that would be.
right. The arts industry and its many ways in which it practices oppression while simultaneously practicing freedom of expression, while simultaneously not practicing liberatory practices. It's like the thing they say to artists. Oh, you should go ahead and take that grant from that company that
Mm.
is,
Mm-hmm.
participating in wars
Mm-hmm.
against humanity, that company that is taking from people's lands, that company that is creating waterways that are not usable.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I thought that was important to share. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing this. Yeah. I got to go to the Biennale in 2019. And it was amazing. But I will say pretty much every piece had some sort of I mean, again, I think all art is political. You can find a political interpretation to any piece that you look at, but overtly political. The pieces there were overtly political. Um, it was interesting you shared with me the other day that piece about climate change, because a lot of the pieces I remember seeing had to do with climate change. but also war and genocide. And there's one piece in particular. I'm not going to use it as an example because I didn't prepare it. I don't remember the name of it. But all I remember was this giant machine and blood splattering everywhere. And just like, and that was
Wow.
one of the first pieces that I saw. And it was in this giant room. And it looked like a machine you would use to like make cars with. It looked like something that would be part of assembly line. And it's working and there's just blood everywhere. And it was wild. And I just remember like walking in and that was the first thing I saw. And I was like, okay, this is what this journey is going to be. This is setting the tone for this journey. But yeah, it was it's so I just find it
Hmm.
interesting that
Hmm.
this is in the news and that this even the other day when I was listening to NPR and they were interviewing this one Russian artist, she didn't want to make any comment about the war in Ukraine. She said, I'm not here to make comment about that. I'm not here to talk about that. And I was
Hmm.
like, I don't know, from my experience at the Biennale, it's very political. Like you have to be prepared to come in and talk about politics. But yeah, anyhow.
Right. Right. It's what's the follow-up though after the Biennale? What
Right.
after you see all the blood splattering? I mean, obviously art does impact, and the people who participate in the art, the audience and the people who create the art, the artists, help create change. So after you see the blood splattering on the walls at the
Hmm.
Venice Biennale, what is the follow-up? Do they have a room for catharsis? Do they have a room for people to talk about where they can do work to stop murders? I don't, I mean, stop
Right.
regimes from just genocide. I mean, it's just what is the follow-up?
Right. Which is kind of what we're going to talk about today. So we'll come back to that
Right,
point.
right.
But follow up is a big part of what I want to talk about today is how do we follow up when you leave these spaces? Taking notes down. You should be proud of me.
Oh, yes, yes.
Yeah, so why don't we get into our question for today?
All right. What is
So,
our question?
yeah, I mentioned it in the introduction, but what we would like to know from our listeners today, and even if you're tuning in later, put it in the comments below. How do you practice liberation on a daily basis?
Hmm. Mm, 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 mm.
Do you have an answer to that? Ooh, you have a funny grin on your face. Are you cringing?
Well, I think I need to define liberation first.
Yeah.
I know we talked about defining different words and terms, but what is liberation? What is liberation? What
Hmm.
is liberation?
Hmm.
So many things. The first things that come to mind are being free to be me
Hmm.
without judgment, being free to live without having to conform to constructs that I am told I need to conform to be able to survive,
Hmm.
being able to have my basic needs met, being able to let me just hold on for that thought because I can't continue.
Someone else's needs need to be
Yeah,
met.
yeah. So please tell me what you think liberation is.
Yeah. So I liked what you said about feeling free, about being authentic. I'm thinking about what makes it radical is unapologetically authentic. Like me being able to be me without feeling guilty, without feeling like me not worrying about disappointing someone by being me, or even just doing something for myself and not having to feel guilty about that or not really giving a damn if other people are judging my actions. That to me is radical. If I just don't care what you think, I'm going to go do this thing for myself. And if you do that on a daily basis, and that's definitely, I think, part of our title today that is quotidian radicality, which I'm actually going to go ahead and read this. It's not really necessarily like a specific definition for quotidian radicality, but I like this description of it. And this is actually from the website, from Jessica Balors's website. Jessica Balors, we're actually going to be interviewing her in our next episode. She's an interdisciplinary artist, community facilitator. She's based out of Washington, D.C., where yours truly's are also based out of. So this is
Whoop,
really
whoop.
cool for us. Whoop, whoop. She weaves together mixed media, painting, installation, ritual performance, and social practice to create sacred spaces. She's inspired by earth-based and syncretic traditions of her Black American and Jewish ancestry. Her art activates ancestral wisdom, personal reflection, and community study. So we're super, super excited to have her on our show. And on her website, she has this one page, this one project that she worked on. She might actually still be working on it. It's called A River Called Us. It was in 2022, but it might be something that she's still continuing to work on. I'm not really sure. That might be a question we ask her. But on that page of that project, she says this: quotidian radicality means the mundane, everyday practices that we engage to refuse systems of oppression and return to our truth. It is a term used by scholar Deborah Thomas, go look her up, to describe the ways that Black women who were more severely punished when attempting to escape and who were more bound to enslavement because of gendered familial expectations, how they practice liberatory ways of being through language, dance, foodways, gardening, child rearing, and other seemingly small radical acts. So that's where I'm thinking like it could be, this I don't know. I don't know if I like the idea of small, but something that's like doesn't seem significant, but it is significant. Everything is significant.
Hmm. I want to step back real quick. First of all, thank you for that definition of, or that, what did you refer to it as, Danny?
A description.
A description of quotidian radicality. When I was trying to get my thought out, and my 4-year-old came over here asking me for something. Speaking of liberation, yes, I know. As a parent, you have no liberation in terms of that. ever,
What
ever
that's
after
why
you
that's
become
why
a
you
parent.
started with what is liberation?
Right, exactly. That's what, I was thinking about it. Thinking about that element. But that's the type of like, okay, I am very fine with him being the person that, basically controls my life right now.
Mhm. Mhm.
um, but having children, rearing children, I believe is part of that description that you shared. And yeah, it's something that women do. It's something that it's it's normal, right? But it's gosh, it's it feels like, in terms of Black maternal health and what has occurred in this country with Black women having babies, going into hospitals, experiencing trauma in while they are in labor, not receiving the best care. So when I hear quotidian radicality, you are still giving birth to Black babies, or to babies in this world, despite being targeted consistently
Mm.
on a daily basis.
Mhm.
So that's one thing that comes to mind in terms of quotidian radicality. I think also, when we continue doing our art practices that may not necessarily flow with the ideas of what art should be, or how it
Mm.
should be made, or how it should be presented, not wanting to work in that way, refusing to take monies from certain industries or companies, individuals. It's part of that daily practice of refusing
Hmm.
to be pushed into a corner
Hmm.
and standing ground to create these new practices of liberation.
Hmm. Yeah. When I was thinking for myself about how do I practice liberation every day, I was thinking more like mindset. Maybe it's not an actual action that I take, maybe it's just my frame of mind. But if I can read another quote, I found this other quote that got me thinking a little bit more about economics, actually, and about actually, there's a lot of things that I do regularly that are practices of liberation that are going against the norms, that are going against the social norms and capitalism. Um, yeah, let me read the quote first, actually, before I go further. So, this is a quote from Let Us All Rise Together: Radical Perspectives of Empowerment for Afro-American Women. And this is in Angela Davis's book, Women, Culture, and Politics from 1989. And I'm actually going to read the full paragraph because I found it very interesting, the context before this quote and how much it relates to right now. This was in 1989. This was 3 years after I was born. Okay, so she writes, in the aftermath of the Reagan era, it should be clear that there are forces in our society that reap enormous benefits from the persistent, deepening oppression of women. Members of the Reagan administration include advocates for the most racist, anti-working class, and sexist circles of contemporary monopoly capitalism. These corporations continue to prop up apartheid in South Africa and to profit from the spiraling arms race while they propose the most vulgar and irrational forms of anti-Sovietism, invoking, for example, the quote, evil empire, end quote, image popularized by Ronald Reagan as justifications for their omnicidal ventures. Excuse me. If we are not afraid to adopt a revolutionary stance, if indeed we wish to be radical in our quest for change, then we must get to the root of our oppression. After all, radical simply means grasping things at the root. Our agenda for women's empowerment must thus be unequivocal in our challenge to monopoly capitalism as a major obstacle to the achievement of equality. So, yeah, so this got me kind of thinking about just what I do daily as far as economics go, as far as, I mean, this made me think of a bunch of things, but economics was the first thing that came up to me. And trading, for example, I trade services a lot with people. And I say it in almost every episode, plant your own damn food. Like I have a community garden where I'm part of a community garden. We have a community garden where we are growing our own food. And that is radical in many ways. And trying to research where can I get things locally directly from farms because I live in kind of a rural area where everyone goes to Walmart and everyone goes to Amazon. And I'm like, where can I go directly to someone to get eggs, to get honey, to get chicken, to get other produce that I'm not growing? How can I trade produce with them, et cetera, et cetera? So those kind of things, I didn't really think of them as being radical. But then, I was like, well, if more people did it too, then it then I think it would then I think people would actually see it as being something more extreme. And I think people still, even though I think Angela Davis helped to, make the word radical not feel so extreme, I still feel like people associate that word with extreme actions. And empowerment of women can't be achieved without, or just empowerment, if any oppressed people cannot be achieved without dismantling all these interlocking systems of exploitation. But if we got everybody participating, if we got everybody doing it, you know, then I feel like that would really, really seem radical.
Right. We always talk about that, getting everybody on board, right? And the first thing, one of the many first things that has to be done is helping people understand what it means so that they don't feel overwhelmed or they don't feel like it's impossible,
Hmm.
right? In terms of the example you gave for the community garden that you are a part of, and in rural areas and growing your own food, there are definitely many ways to do it, right? Many
Hmm.
ways to do it. People do it in cities on their balconies, but you still have to have the resources. You still have to
Hmm.
know where to go to get the seeds. You still have to, in these rural areas, for example, have those mom and pop stores and not say I have to
Right.
go to Walmart or shop on
Right.
Amazon. And it's a challenge because, I live in a rural area as well.
Hmm.
But you have to have access to the other things in which, or that can help you go to these other places and support maybe the mom and pop stores as
Hmm.
opposed to the Walmart. You have to have a vehicle. You have to have some way of getting
Right.
around.
Right.
So
Yeah.
you have to know people if you don't have a vehicle, right? You don't have what is it called? Any of those car riding car sharing
Hmm.
services.
Hmm.
There are none in rural
Mm-mm.
areas. It's
Mm-mm.
not available in the same way. And then you have to have the money to be able to do that. You
Hmm.
know, it's it, it's a struggle in a society that is not structured to help you in that way.
Yeah.
So you, like you said, have to do it yourself. So if it's not there, then what can you do? Okay, I need to make my own A, B, and C to the best of my ability.
Hmm.
But the other part is that you have to want to do it. You have to want to, you know,
It's so easy to
be
just go on
right,
Amazon, right?
right. You have to want to do it. It's, we can continuously talk about all of this and getting people on board, but people have to want to do it. And so one
Mhm.
mama up here told me that, look, I'm going to do what I can do, and hopefully people will join in, but I'm gonna still do what I'm going to do because that's how I am being radical, basically. I have to do this on a daily basis. I can't make people do stuff.
Yeah. 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 No, that's what I was thinking about too, because it's like when it comes down to researching, like let's say I gotta go to the grocery store, like just trying to research what is this on the label? Where did it come from? Is it actually organic? All those things. It takes
Right.
so much time. It takes so much time. And by the time I get to the grocery store, it's right before they're about to close at 11 o'clock at night. I'm exhausted. I'm like, it looks yummy. F it. I'm taking it. Like, and it's on sale, whatever. It's like, but it gets you thinking, like, it does take time to be radical too. It does take
Mm,
time. And, but this is what got me thinking of like radical self-care. And we talked about this in a previous episode too, of
mhm,
like, I feel this constant pressure, and I totally acknowledge it is mostly me putting it on myself. It is not society, it's me putting it on me of like, I gotta hustle, I gotta run, I gotta hustle, I gotta run, I gotta hustle, right? And it's this survival mindset and trying to go back to a thriving mindset where I trust the money's just, it's gonna come when it needs to come. I'm gonna be taken care of, and I'm also gonna take care of other people. Everything, if y'all haven't seen an episode with Nawili yet, you gotta go back and see that because that is what I'm referring to right now. But
right.
it's like this radical self-care of being like, no, actually, I don't have to work in this moment. I can sit my ass down in a hammock and read a book or just stare at the clouds. And that is fine. And I don't need to feel guilty about that. And that money will come. I'm not going to worry about money right now. I'll worry about money later. You know what I mean? So,
Right.
you know, doing the things that society, I always felt this pressure from my family. Everyone worked insane hours. Everyone in my family was a machine. And that's why that machine at the Biennale with the blood everywhere really hit me because it made me feel like it's not just war. It's just we are just even just this week, I had a friend pass away, and it just makes me think we just work,
Mhm.
work, work till we're dead, until we drop. And I was like, that is not what life is supposed to be. Again, going back to our other episode with some, it's like we're
Mhm.
supposed to, in our utopias, we're supposed to, what was that tree that he referenced? Like
You know what? I don't. Oh
persinium,
yeah,
per,
persimmon with
persimmons.
the
Like we're
fruit, the
just
fruit,
we're supposed to
fruit.
the trees of fruits and make love and make music. That's what we're here on this planet for, right? So I just think that, me saying, no, guess what? I'm not going to be a machine today, and I'm going to sit and just be
Hmm.
still. That's, to me, that does feel radical, and I don't really do it very often, and I should do it more. So as far as like my takeaway from this episode, as far as how I practice liberation, that's one thing that I still am learning of how to
Right.
radical self-care.
It's an ongoing process because we have learned the opposite.
Yeah,
And even in what you said, Danny, about it's not society, it's me. I beg to differ. I don't want to dismiss the fact that society perpetuates these ideas of work,
sure,
work, 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 work,
sure.
work, 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 work,
You
work,
ever
work,
see the Energizer Bunny?
regardless.
Because
Right.
that's totally me.
Regardless of how you feel, if you're sick, if you are tired, it's about what more can I put out? What more can I put into the system of product so that I can fuel the economy? Right,
Hmm.
not so that I can fuel my soul, not so that I can feed my spirit,
Hmm.
but so that I can fuel this economy that is consistently holding me back and holding me down because I'm not playing into the game. And then it's the thing with you have to play parts of the game
Yeah.
to be able to get out of the game. And I'm just so sick of that. I wrote to myself in my journal this week, I am tired. I am tired of this thing, this game that tries to consistently force me to do what is going against my spirit. I'm tired
Hmm.
of it. And I
Hmm.
know that it happens to people who practice this radical acts, or radical, I should say, practice radical acts on a daily basis. Small, big, medium sized, whatever it might be. Just like you said, just sitting down and saying, oh, you know what? No, I'm not doing that right now. I am going to sit. I'm tired of it, and we definitely have to acknowledge that we all perpetuate it.
Hmm.
That's
Hmm.
what it
Hmm.
actually, let me take that back. I will acknowledge that I perpetuate it in different ways.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I know that I'm actively trying to not perpetuate it. But damn it, it is so, so, so difficult. It is so difficult to not perpetuate it when, yeah, I don't actually know how to do certain things. I'm not an expert at everything, so I go to someone else to get those things that I need. And even though I am going to this mom and pop store, they might actually be buying from a larger corporation that I
Right.
don't want to support. So
Right.
it's, oh my gosh, like what in the world? It's all connected. It's all
Yeah.
connected. And so practicing this quotidian radicality to achieve liberation is such a challenge,
Hmm.
right? It's such a challenge, but I think it is possible. I just have to maintain the course and make sure that I am practicing restful,
Yeah.
or giving myself rest and making sure that there is joy. Because I'm tired. I'm
Right.
tired of the consistent and constant battles to just have basic needs met. I'm tired.
Right. And I feel like we measure each other I'm saying speaking generally. I'm not speaking me and you, but like we as a society, American society, measure people by their wealth, by their successes in their careers, the letters that come after their names, things like that. And what if we measured people by joy? Wow, that person's really happy. It doesn't
Or
even
the kind
matter.
acts, or the kind acts.
Right,
Remember
right,
in the
exactly.
last episode
Yeah.
episode we were talking about the kind acts, part three of the Nail of Poetry collection.
Hmm.
I believe that was the episode where if
Hmm.
you we're measuring on, okay, so you did this many kind things. Or
Hmm.
maybe I'm remembering
Yeah, no, Phineas,
incorrectly.
he said that. That's what he said. He said,
Okay. Oh,
Imagine
so
if
that was
that's how we, he didn't say it was like monetization or anything, but like, like what if that's how you succeeded in life? That's how you got further in life was
right.
based on the number of nice things you did.
Right, but then it's like, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, I cut you off. Is it performative at that point?
Yeah.
Is it performative, or are you actually? Is it just about, hey, mankind? How about we don't have to be judged or measured? It's just, hey, be kind, and we are receiving what we need, and we're getting what we need, and we're helping each other,
Hmm.
and we're moving along, and we're all practicing liberation, and we all getting free.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it wasn't the Nail of Poetry collection. It was
The
oh
one
my gosh.
before that. What was the one before
Yes.
that?
Oh my goodness gracious. We this is our fifth year, y'all. This is our a 5-year anniversary.
All right, I'm gonna look it
So
up because it's bothering me
yeah,
now.
we will definitely share that with you all. Navigating artivism.
Navigate,
The
that was it.
navigating
Yeah.
artivism.
Good job.
Yes. Part three. Yes. So it's I interjected. I
I
disrupted
also
Danny's
interrupted
thought.
you. I'm sorry. Go
No,
ahead.
I disrupted Danny's thought. If you do recall where I interjected with this acts of kindness, please
Yes. I like
continue.
what you said though about performative. So let's talk about performance here. What's funny is what you just said totally made me think of the people that donate to arts institutions to have their name on a big plaque on the wall when you enter this art institution. And it's like this person donated the most money. That's why their name is on the top. And I'm like, I'm glad they donated, but it kind of feels a little performative. It feels a little bit like you could have made it an anonymous donation. You could have made it anonymous, but you chose not to. So it's like, and it's also like again, it gets me thinking back to reparations of like, all these people who hoard wealth. Just imagine if they didn't hoard their wealth and they put it out there to people who need it, who don't have generational wealth, and just imagine if everyone just hoarded a little bit less, just what that world, what big step that could help us in the right direction. But performative, it's like the amount of people who I've met, and I'm thinking definitely about white women saviors, of who they they're trying to show their morals. They're trying to, I feel like, prove something to themselves and to the world, whether or not they have ancestors who were slave owners or immigrants or whatever, there's this white guilt and it's like, okay, but now I gotta, do this thing and I gotta make sure it's publicized so everyone knows that I did this thing.
Oh, I see.
So,
I see.
so yeah, but again, the performative aspect. But really, since we're going to be talking about performance theory in this collection, in my opinion, I said earlier, all art is political. I actually feel that everything is a performance. I started studying performance theory when I was like 19 or something like that. So it's deep in my studies, in my research, where I approach everything like a performance. Any kind of behavior that's been done more than once is now something you've rehearsed, right? It's something that you are performing. So, for example, this week I had to go to a funeral. A funeral is definitely, you could definitely think of that as a performance. It's like we're coming into this specific space where we all are wearing specific costumes. We all have scripts. We all have things that we're supposed to say. I'm sorry for your loss. If there's anything that you need, please let me know. Just like there's all these things you're supposed to say when you go to a funeral, right? And then there's a structure, there's a script for the ceremony, and there's props involved, flowers, for example. And then you leave this space, and you're supposed to leave now, in an ideal funeral setting, you're supposed to leave like, okay, now we've accepted that this person has passed on. And in all of our different ways, how he or she has passed on in our mind, like have maybe for heaven for one person, maybe they're just at peace for another person. So a funeral is, you know, same thing as a wedding, quinceañera, you have these different rites of passage, and they're all performative, but also going to a job interview, going to on a first date, and even simple things like we talked about rituals. A lot of times when you have a rite of passage, you have a ritual associated. Like I'm thinking ritual in the sense of the definition of a ceremonial gathering, but you also have like daily rituals, morning rituals. Maybe in my perfect world, I would be meditating every morning. But usually it's coffee. That's what starts the day. In the future, it'll be coffee and then meditation, maybe. But we have like our morning rituals. We have our evening rituals. We so it's everything is has a pattern to it, and you could think of all of these spaces also as liminal spaces. So a funeral, you go into this chapel. I was in a chapel this week. I'm not saying all funerals happen in chapels, obviously, but in this chapel, this is a liminal space. This is an in-between space where transformation happens. We're grieving and we're accepting. And of course, though, when we leave that space, doesn't mean we're done grieving, doesn't mean we're necessarily done accepting. So then it's like, what happens in that post-liminal phase? And that leads me to like what you brought up earlier about the follow-up. So when we leave the Biennale, for example, we've just left this liminal space where we've experienced different emotions, political views, whatever it is. Now we leave, and it's like, well, what do we do with this information and all these feelings now? We've talked about this in many different episodes, right? But I feel like artists in particular are missing out on that part of the ritual if there's not a follow up. I feel like they're missing out on that because in when you're in this liminal space, you might be experiencing it on an individual level, but what's really cool is there's also what I'm actually referring to here is actually Victor Turner. He's the one who wrote a lot on ritual theater. So if you want to go check out his book From Ritual to Theater, you can do that in his other books. There's actually some really great YouTube videos about Victor Turner and his thoughts about ritual theater. But he had this term called communitas, instead of communities, communitas, where it's this idea of in these liminal spaces, you kind of build this camaraderie with the other people in that space. Maybe they're people you never meet again. Maybe they are people that become your friends, or lovers or whatever, but this idea of like when you're in a theater and you're watching a play and everyone laughs together, there's this kind of like, okay, we're all connected now in this way. So when we leave the space, what happens to that connection, right? So I feel like when the artist doesn't have a follow-up, they're missing on this opportunity to continue fostering community, even not just, getting people to think about, well, how did this piece affect you and what are you going to now do with that information? But also, like, how can we continue fostering these relationships with people, especially if you have a space where you can get all sorts of different people together, like the Biennale. There's so many people from all over the world in those spaces. Just imagine the cool conversations that could be happening if another liminal space was facilitated afterwards. Did that make sense?
Oh
All of
no, it
that?
makes perfect. Yes, it makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense. And that example of the funeral being this performance, this ritual performance, right? It's so fascinating to hear it in that way and described in that way because it did feel like you were describing a theater production,
Hmm.
right? Uh the follow-up question as you were giving the insights, I was thinking, so what if the follow up is the continuation of your practice as an artist? You consistently are doing this work to
Mm.
share with people, to inspire. And in those liminal spaces afterwards, when people connect in between the moments of these grand actions or these actions in the public, the liminal space I'm looking at as those connections that you referred to, those conversations potentially lead to more actions.
Hmm.
And we don't always know, right, what is going to come from these spaces like the Venice Biennale or whatever it might be, where we're doing these type of rituals, or where in other places around the world where artists are performing a ritual, or artists are performance artists and creating works. If we don't know what the outcome is going to be, that goes back to that idea of measuring the impact of the arts when you don't
Hmm.
know.
Hmm.
However, if we can add that one part in, like you're talking about, as artists, a follow-up, what would that look like,
Hmm.
in the continuation of the practice of of exploring and uplifting and inspiring liberation and freedom. And speaking of Jessica Valoris, our guest for part 2 of this collection, her having the study kit,
Oh
right?
yeah.
The study kit is, to me, a type of follow up. You experience the work, you go into whatever space it is, or outside, wherever it is, the space, you experience the ideas, you experience uh, the emotions, and then afterwards you have this kind of tool that you can
Hmm.
use to learn, you can study, you can pass on. And that's the type of follow-up, I think, that we're talking about, right? And another type of follow-up being, hey, I might facilitate a conversation
Hmm.
after this Venice Biennale. I might just, hey, y'all, let's go back to the hotel, and let's talk about what we just experienced and what do we do next. You know,
Hmm.
continuing that quotidian radicality,
Hmm.
saying no to, oh, I have to actually go into the office, or I have to check my emails while I'm here at the Venice Biennale because I have work to do. It's just like, okay, you know what? Actually, I will do that later. Right now, after this experience, is important to have this conversation and talk about how we can follow up as a choice, to continue that practice being radical, saying no to this thing that will continue the oppressive structures, or add into how you are oppressed through your place of employment, especially if it's a place that you don't want to work or where
Hmm.
you don't want to work, and saying, you know what, no, no, this is what I need to do right now because this is what's going to help me, and I think will help humanity evolve
Hmm.
and progress.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be nice? So let's just do it. Let's just do it. Wait a minute, hold on. It was something, matter of fact, it's so crazy how this happens. I was listening to the People's Forum on their education series, and this was the series talking about I forget the exact title, but artists must take a side. And
Mm.
Tony Bambara, someone was bringing up one of the panelists. I apologize, I do not recall her name. She brought up Tony Bambara, and she uh, shared a quote from her, and I hope I can share it correctly, because it speaks to how we need to, or how I am asking myself and others to perform, right?
Hmm.
Not simply as um, not simply as a entertaining element of our lives, but a performance in terms of what you shared earlier in that performance theory. All of it, our lives and how we move about the day, is a performance.
Hmm.
If I'm understanding correctly.
Yeah.
Um, but she said something along the lines of, if you the challenge is to do it. Let me see if I can find it, because
Hmm.
it was so great, and I just want to make sure I say it in
Right.
relation to this, because it makes all the sense in terms of what we're talking about. Let me see if I can find it really
Well,
quickly.
Janet is searching. I'd like to remind all of our listeners, please check out the show notes to these episodes because we put lots of links in there to all the different things that we're discussing, including I do want to remind you all of Jessica Valoris's website. It's real easy, jessicavaloris.com. She spells her name JESSICAVALORIS.com. So definitely go check out her website. And if you want on her website. You can check out, for those people who are watching, you probably saw me hold this earlier, but the study kit that Janet was referring to is called How We Be Free, a Black Fugitive Study Kit. And it's actually, speaking of playing cards, it's actually cards and dice. And I just got mine, so I'm super excited to get into it and try it. My boyfriend doesn't know yet that we're going to do this later to prepare for our next episode. This is
Right.
so cool. Once y'all see the dice, when you see the cards, it's so cool looking. And I'm like, just for those of you who are watching, there are three cool black dice with these awesome symbols on it in white. And I don't even know what the symbols mean yet, but what's immediately apparent to me is there's a very spiritual, ancestral feel to this. So I'm looking forward to getting into it. And we'll come back to that theme of spirituality in just a second. Did you find that quote, Janet?
I did. So Tony K. Bombara, I'm going to say her whole name correctly, Tony K. Bombara. She says, in terms of in terms of what we're talking about, I'm relating this to this quote that is online actually. Uh, the most effective way to do it is to do it. The most effective way to do it is to do it. So, since we're talking about follow ups, right? Like, hey, you know what? I see that there's no follow up here. And I am feeling that a follow up would be extremely helpful to continuing this conversation. So, you know what? I'm going to make the follow up.
Hmm.
I'm going
Hmm.
to do it. I am going to create that space.
Hmm.
And if you feel like you can't create the space, then who do you know in your network that can
Hmm.
create
Hmm.
the space?
Hmm.
Just delving deeply in it and investigating and thinking about it and making these things happen that will help
Hmm.
us all in these quotidian radicalities. You creating these new social imaginaries to live in places of freedom and liberation. You
Hmm.
know, this is follow up.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking about earlier when I was like, how do I practice liberation on a daily basis? I was like, just radical imagination. Just imagining a different world, a more radical world, if you want to call it radical, like that. But that is, I feel like, quotidian radicality for sure.
Quotidian.
Quotidian. Did I say, what did I say?
You said quotidian.
I said quoto. Did I really? Quotidian. Quotidian. Quotidian? I don't even know why I said quota. I don't
Quota.
know.
Exactly. Look, you got a
I have been
quota.
slipping on my words a little
Get
bit
them
today.
quotas. Get
Y'all,
them quotas.
I have not gotten a lot of sleep this week. When right before we got on this episode, I was like, Janet, we got to get started. I don't want to sit here and wait anymore. We got to get rolling. I do want to before we close out because I know we're close on time. I did want to talk a little briefly about spirituality if we can, but I
Please.
want to make sure.
Yes.
Did you have any follow up to
Yes.
that quote though before we go?
I do want to say, to complete the story of how this even came up and what's so fascinating about it, the People's Forum, the education series, um, I saw that it was happening. Filmmaker, actor, Mtume Gant, I saw it on his Instagram, and then I went, online and experienced this workshop. It was so great. I definitely suggest checking that out. The People's Forum online, this education series, and this one was "The Artist Must Choose Sides," I believe is the title. And one of the panelists was talking about Tony Cade Bombara, right? And that was on a Wednesday. And then as I'm, rounding out the research for our collection, I'm not finished researching, but as I continue, uh, one of the articles that was written on Jessica, by gosh, she calls herself Sister Doctor. Um, where is it? Let me see.
You said
Uh,
sister doctor. What was it?
Sister Doctor
Okay.
is what I recall her calling herself. Alexis Pauline Gums wrote um a response, an article basically on one of Jessica's works in one of her exhibits called Spot in the Sun. And
Oh, okay.
so I went to that article, and then I saw that there is this, what is it called? Black feminist breathing, right? That Alexis has on her website. And from there, I'm scrolling down, reading through Tony K. Bombara again within the same week. And I was like, okay, yeah, so I'm gonna have to go and read some certain
Mm-hmm.
things.
Mm-hmm.
And then I see this mantra as part of that breathing exercise. Which is an entire series of breathing exercises. So we'll include that as well in the show notes.
Yeah.
The link to Alexis Pauline Gum's website, but it's the most effective way to do it is to do it. Um, and I I just felt like, wow,
Yeah.
right. And this in a moment where I'm trying to figure out work, and I'm thinking about spirituality. Going
Mm-hmm.
back into
Mm-hmm.
the question that you just posed about, or bringing up spirituality. So please, let's get into that.
Well, yeah, how about this? I'll just ask you, we and spoiler alert, Jan and I did kind of talk a little bit about this yesterday.
Yeah, little
Uh
pre-show talks.
yeah, and we didn't get too deep into it, and we're unfortunately not gonna have a ton of time right now. But I was just kind of curious, like from you, Janet, I was asking like what what is spirituality for you? Because for me, living in a very religious area, I struggle sometimes to tell people I'm spiritual because then they assume that I'm Christian. And I'm like, no, actually. So for me, it's been interesting trying to explain to people if I'm spiritual that that doesn't necessarily mean religious. And I feel like you had a good way of thinking of it for yourself and it was helpful for me. Do you want to share on that?
You know what? I'll just read what we have in our notes, and it would be nice to just hear your reflections on what I shared, right? Like, I'll say this because, as you said, time. Um, so for me, spirituality is, as Danny has graciously written down and taken notes for us, the freedom to be, your soul's freedom, versus religion, which is a doctrine that you must follow. Spirituality is what I experience when I want to experience it, is giving myself that liberation, right? Having the liberation, having the freedom to be able to move about the world in the way that I would like. Whereas religion for me is definitely a doctrine. And an example that I was thinking about was when I went into a mosque in Tunisia many years ago, and I had to cover up, as far as putting cloth on my head, wrapping my head over my shoulders when I went into the mosque. And it's because within Islam, women going into the mosque have to, be a certain way. I cannot speak to the religion deeply. I'm just speaking from my experience. And thinking about that, I had to do it to go in. I could have said, you know what, I don't want to, but I wanted to, experience something, a different culture, wanted to learn. And so I did what I had to do. And that's religion for me. You have to follow these specific rules. Spirituality, there are no rules. It
Mm.
is how your spirit guides you. It's what spirit says to you. I have a friend, artist and educator Ronika Pinkney, who refers to spirit as a noun. Like it's
Hmm.
spirit moves me to do this. Um, Spirit said, yeah, no, that's not going to work. I
Hmm.
believe I'm
Hmm.
using the correct grammar, language, and that
Yeah.
is the difference for me. So I'm curious, Danny, when I was sharing yesterday, how did you
Hmm.
interpret it?
First of all, I love what you just said. You didn't say that yesterday, and that I really like that. Spirit said no. I it's like my boss inside said, nope, ain't happening. Uh,
Sorry.
sorry, but not sorry, right? No,
Mm,
I love that. What I liked too, you said yesterday, when you think of spirit, you think of freedom and you think of soul. And I was like, yes. I was like, maybe I don't like doctrines because I'm too much of a punk ass, but I was like, I just like thinking more about the soul aspect of like, this is feeding my soul, or is this not feeding my soul? You know what I mean? Or, so I think spirit and soul kind of interchangeably. But then I was like thinking about spirit and liberation interchangeably of like, okay, instead of practicing liberation every day, practicing spirit every
mm,
day. So that's what kind of got me
mm,
thinking about it, was because I didn't really associate spirit with freedom
mm,
until you mentioned that yesterday. I was like, wow, I really like that. Like, how am I practicing spirit every day? How am I feeding my soul every day? And that also feels radical.
right,
So
right, right. Ooh, ooh. Mm,
I found, but honestly, my big thing takeaway from that conversation yesterday was just like, I have a way to explain this now to people if I choose to, which honestly in this area, I don't really choose to, because
mhm, mhm,
a lot of people, I feel like before I start talking, their motivation is to get me to come to their church. A lot of
mhm,
people on the daily ask me, like on the daily, like, what church do you go to? What church you go to? What church you go to? And I'm like, actually, I don't go to a church. So
mm.
it's
That's their quotidian radicality.
right. And that made me think of that too, because that's why I said on the daily, like, that's part of their practice too, is recruitment and spreading their faith and um
Regardless
all
of
the
people
rules that
saying,
come
please
with
leave me
it.
alone.
Yeah. So, but for me, spirituality is very personal. And I
Mm,
was like, maybe I should share more about it. But I think part of the reason I don't is because I fear that people will think I'm trying to push something on them. You know what I mean? Because that's how I've been feeling lately
hmm.
in this
Are
area.
they are they are they are they fearing that they're trying to push something on you?
Or I think honestly, it scares them, the idea of someone not being Christian. Sometimes I think that's what scares them, you
So are
know.
you going to allow for them to control how you want to respond to them? It's one thing to be like, hey, I just don't feel like dealing with y'all. It's another thing to be like, ooh, I don't know how you're gonna receive this, how I feel.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
It's tricky because these are people, like, for example, it's my students. My
Hmm.
students will ask me what church I go to. My students'
Right.
parents will ask me what church I go to. So I sometimes feel like I'm walking a delicate,
Oh, Lord, we
you
getting
know.
back to that economics of not being
Yeah,
free.
exactly,
Ooh.
exactly. And so trying to,
Mm,
so I usually say, actually, I don't go to a church, and and hopefully it stops there because I don't feel the need that I have to explain more.
mm-hmm.
I don't feel like I have to explain,
And you don't.
and I don't. Sometimes I feel like they're pushing me to, but I'm like, I don't need to because unless I sense that they want to really learn as opposed to they're already, I have to kind of just get a sense of what their motivation is, right?
Right. Yeah.
But I will say,
Yeah.
like, as far as spirituality goes, I had an awesome visit with my godfathers last weekend where we talked about Buddhism a lot, and it was
Hmm.
very inspiring to me. And, there are definitely people that I can talk to about things. They just might not be right where I live.
Mm-hmm. That's okay. So Buddhism, like I know we're over time, but I feel like this is important to continue, right? This bit of the conversation. Because okay, so religion,
Hmm.
but spirituality.
Hmm.
Religion and spirituality.
Hmm.
Spirituality and religion. It's a practice,
Hmm.
it's a doctrine.
Hmm.
So what uplifts spirituality in Buddhism compared to Christianity? Like I'm oh,
That's a
how can I
big
articulate
question.
this thought?
I think I
How
know
can
what you're asking, but I'm not 100% sure.
because when I think about Buddhism, I actually think about spirituality. I don't
Yeah,
think
yeah.
about religion,
Right.
but
Right.
it is
But to me,
a
meditation,
religion, right?
well, no,
Is
I
it a
consider it a
practice? Is
philosophy. I consider it a
it's a
philosophy.
philosophy? Okay.
With like, here's some things you can, I mean, if you want to become a monk, then there's like rules, obviously, right? But like, here are some
Right.
meditations you can choose to do if you want, and they're very freeing if you do them. They're very liberating if you do them. Um, and I am not a Buddhist and I am not an expert in Buddhism, just want to put that down. But um,
Disclaimers. We have to
but
give these
I'm
disclaimers.
super inspired by it. And I having this conversation last week and got me thinking like, yeah, I want to kind of dive back into some research on Buddhism
Well,
and the brain in particular. My godfather gave me a great book about Buddhism and science of the brain. I'm very excited to dive into it after
and
I,
now Wheatley
get through all
practices
these other
Buddhism.
books that I have to read for this podcast.
Oh Lord. Oh Lord. Now Wheatley practices Buddhism, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah.
so it's yeah, I'm like we're saying, like we're not experts on this, and this is why I'm asking these questions. Because I'm like, yeah, it's but philosophy, yes, that makes sense
Hmm.
to me. Um yeah, spirituality, performance, and ritual.
Hmm.
Oh gosh, man.
Yeah. Because this is something we're laying all these things down, y'all, because in the next episode, we're gonna go on a trip to the cosmos with Jessica. And, we're gonna I haven't gotten into these cards yet. I'm excited to get into the study kit, but it's gonna be a spiritual experience and talking about act activism, activating people,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's
Mm-hmm.
politically or maybe in a spiritual sense, how those are connected. And again,
Mm-hmm.
it's like when I'm thinking about if we're going to empower people and if we're going to be equal, we have to tackle all these different forms of oppression. And spirituality is going to be, I'm not saying spirituality is an oppression, but like this is one area that needs to be addressed. This one area that we need to, you know, again, back to self-care. It's like until we take care of our souls, we can't take care of anybody else, and that is just one step
Mm-hmm.
into the bigger radicalization.
Mm-hmm. I'm looking at this other word, ceremony.
Yeah.
So practicing ceremony for liberation and research and studying and seeing what our ancestors
Hmm.
have done to liberate themselves, that quotidian radicality of liberation, and I see Jessica's work as such, right?
Hmm.
Just overall in all of the works that she creates, performance, uh, I'll say collage, painting. Um, yeah, I am excited to have the conversation and delve deeper into her practice and talking about what that follow up is and
Hmm.
what does it mean to be free and what does it mean to liberate oneself and with ceremony and with ritual, how do we, well, not how do we, when we do these rituals, when we attend these ceremonies, like you were saying earlier,
Hmm.
a ceremony like a funeral or a wedding, whatever it might be, how are we taking in what we're receiving spiritually in those moments and looking at how that impacts our lives thereafter, how
Hmm.
we
Hmm.
practice liberation, how we practice freedom? Are we thinking about those things when we're experiencing these such ceremonies and then specific ceremonies about liberation and freedom and what is involved in those ceremonies? You talked about, props, and it's weird to use the word props because it seems so what is the word? Oh my gosh, I just had it. Like it's not quotidian, but utilitarian. What is it? Utilitarian, like a utility.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like
yeah.
this practical object, this thing, but props in the sense of ceremony being these sacred
Yeah,
objects.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
you know, it's just I'm thinking about all those things, and I'm definitely looking forward to getting into um that conversation with her about this.
Yeah.
Oh, so
It's
how
gonna
do
be
we feel?
good.
Right, how do we feel, Danny? Do we want to go ahead and
Well, in the theme of we're machines and we keep working, I have a student who's going to show up at my doorstep in about 15 minutes. So we should probably wrap it
oh
up.
yeah, we should probably wrap it up. Wrap it up.
At least I'm
So in
teaching
part,
drums and it's fun and I do love my job. I have a lot of joy for my job, so that's good. But yeah.
right, right, yeah. I don't want to talk about jobs right now. So in part two of the Quotidian Radicality Collection, we will be chatting with Jessica Valores, and you don't want to miss this trip through the cosmos, as Danny has mentioned, with Jessica happening on Saturday, May 23rd at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Saturday, May 23rd at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Time. Mark your
Quotidian.
calendars. Right, quotidian. Mark your calendars, subscribe to the channel so you can get the notification.
Ding, ding, ding.
And again, just to reiterate, Jessica Valores is an interdisciplinary artist and community facilitator based in Washington, D.C.
Whoop, whoop.
We'd like to remind our listeners that this podcast is funded by both of us, your lovely lady artivists, and your donations. So please keep this podcast going by making a donation through our PayPal link in the show notes below. All right. So right now, hit that subscribe button. Right now, did you do it? I'm gonna give you a second. All right, you did it. And then share RFC with a friend. Okay. So thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for this amazing conversation, Janet.
Oh, thank you, Danny. All right. Peace, y'all.